Let's bring in the new year in the 305. We're going to cap Gulfstream Park New Year's Eve day. Salutations and welcome, friends. My name is Matthew Desantis. You can find me on Twitter at the handle @FailToMenace. And welcome to another episode of Capping the Card, where we go through all of the races on a particular card on a certain day and give you the top pick, top value play. It's a great show if you're interested in trying to download all the information you can for one card. Last week we did Santa Anita opening day, and let me tell you, we had quite a day. My top picks returned a $3.45 investment on a straight $2 win bet across the board. Gave out about 3 exactas. My guest Ryan Gamino gave out a huge exacta in race 3 that day. Gave out a $71 exacta with Dicey Mochara and Flashiest. So we try to make you money on this show. The last few weeks, we've really been on a roll. Top picks returning positive ROI. That's what it's all about. We're not just trying to give you chalk, but listen, we're also not going to avoid chalk when we think it's the most obvious play. So we're going to focus this week on Gulfstream Park. But before we do, make sure to subscribe to Trust the Profits. We got so much great stuff planned in the new year. And make sure to follow me on Twitter at the handle @FailedToMenace for all of my content as well. But like I said, we're going to dive in to the 305 Gulfstream Park on New Year's Eve day. We got 5, count them, 5 graded stakes races. You can't beat that. I know that gets even my guy Pitbull excited. One of my favorite artists. Actually, fun fact, the last concert I went to before the pandemic hit, Pitbull, down in Texas, where I was living at the time. I love that guy in a non-ironic way. So let's dive into an 11 race card at Gulfstream Park on Saturday, December 31st. Like I said, 5 graded stakes races, 6 overall stakes races, some really big names, some really great value to be found throughout the card, both up top and underneath. But let's dive right into the card for Saturday at Gulfstream Park. And we'll start with race 1, $20,000 claimer, a mile and a 16th on the turf for 3-year-olds and up. And listen, in this one, I moved beyond the favorite. The favorite is the number 6, the Chad Brown horse that has been doing nothing but running in state restricted optional claimers up in New York. 2 for 10 winning lifetime. He's going off a 2-1 in the morning line. No, thank you. That's the Chad Brown horse that's going to get bet down. Irad's riding. I'm going to try to move past that. The number 5 horse is the second choice, actually, at 9-2. Very little turf experience there. So moving beyond those two. And I really like the 9, Telephone Talker, 5-1 in the morning line. Tyler Gaffleone up on the mount for Safi Joseph Jr. If you go back and look, this is a horse that has been running on the synthetic lately, but if you go back and look at those turf efforts, they're very solid. In fact, the last time this horse ran on turf was about 2 years ago in the Wood Chipper Stakes, which actually is this weekend as well at Fairgrounds. So this, ran against Pixelate and Dynadrive and some nice horses in that race 2 years ago, posted an 84 Beyer speed figure, which would be more than enough to win in this race probably. You go back before that, this horse was running 88, 81, 78 Beyer speed figures on the turf. That absolutely fits in this spot. This horse is 3 for 3 lifetime going this distance on the turf in the money with 2 wins. I think Safi's been looking to try to get this horse on the turf in the right spot, previously trained by Mike Maker. So I like Telephone Talker up top at 5-1. Underneath, I think there's a couple of places to go for value. I'll mention obviously Walk Up Music, the number 10, but I'll also give you another one just in case you're thinking about it before we move on to race 2. But Walk Up Music, 10-1 on the morning line for James Sibeli, jockeyed by Paco Lopez. This is kind of a little bit of a trainer play. This horse actually was off for almost a year and a half, from June 2021 to December 2022. So almost 18-month layoff. Amazingly, this horse actually came back from that layoff and ran a relatively competitive 4th place in a $20,000 claimer. Now is coming back in kind of the same spot, stretching out a little bit longer. This is a horse that's won at a mile and a 16th before. This is a horse that's run pretty well at Gulfstream Park, started its career at Gulfstream Park, actually. Almost broke its maiden there the very first time out. Really, this horse has some really nice running lines. And when you look at it, This is a horse who ran really well first time out, then went to the dirt in sloppy conditions, didn't run well, then ran in a race and something clearly went wrong. Horse went to the bench for about 4 months, came back, ran again, went to the bench again, ran again off the bench and broke its maiden in a $35,000 maiden claimer, then went on the bench again for about 8 months, came back, actually won an allowance race over yielding turf at Delaware Park, and now came back, like I said, after 18 months. So this horse just hasn't really been healthy, but this horse hasn't run bad races, really. Like I said, 10-1, I think you're getting fair value. The other horse I'll mention is the number one, My Man Flint at 12-1. It's another interesting horse if you're interested, including maybe in deeper vertical exotics. The turf efforts, again, have been solid. You just have to sift through them because there's a lot of synthetic experience there as well. This horse is 2 for 5 winning on the turf and 2 for 4 winning at Gulfstream Park. So perfect at this distance as well. Just won last time out. So stepping up in class a little bit. But like I said, there's a lot to like there, I think, for this particular horse at 12-1, top for a little bit of value. Well, let's move on to race number 2 on the card. And this is the first of a couple of maiden special weights. This one's an $84,000 maiden special weight, 7 furlongs on the dirt for 2-year-olds. And there's a couple of big horses in this race. There's a couple of big names. I actually always try to look past that a little bit if I can. There's a lot of first-time starters. There's only 2 horses with previous experience. The favorite, Kentucky Joker, who's a Dale Roman horse. Listen, I like Dale Romans as a guy. Seems like a great person. He's only winning 8% on the year. A 5-2 Dale Romans horse who came up short last time out. Granted, it was at a big maiden special weight, $108,000 maiden special weight. Still, I'm going to look elsewhere for a barn that isn't exactly firing this year. So where am I going to look? Well, there's a couple of Todd Pletcher horses in here. There's a Saffie Joseph horse in here. I'm ultimately going to go to the number 5, though, Case, at 5-1 on the morning line for Jonathan Thomas. This is a trainer who has a lot of success getting horses cranked up first time out. 26% first time out winners out of this barn for a $2.44 ROI. That's about as good as you're going to find for any barn in this country first time out. And Jonathan Thomas isn't getting the same type of stock usually that Todd Pletcher's getting, that Bob Baffert's getting, that Chad Brown's getting. So the fact that he's doing this with the horses he has, I think really says a lot. Now, this particular horse was actually a $375,000 purchase. This is a horse with some expectations to it. I like the works. If you notice, if you look on the PPs, the works are kind of interesting in that they kind of go fast, slow, but I think that's by design. Last one out was a 1:01, 5 furlong work that looked very good 2 days before Christmas. I think this is a horse at 5-1 on the morning line. Jose Ortiz aboard. I know people are giving Jose a hard time, but listen, he's winning 30% at Gulfstream Park right now, actually 80% in the money out of those 10 races so far that he's had down at Gulfstream. So can't argue with that. So that's where I'm going to go for up top. Underneath, where am I going to go? I like the number 4, good looking in rags. It's an interesting horse. This horse is actually continuing to step up in class. You don't see that a lot in maiden special weights. This is a horse that debuted in a maiden special weight 42 at Delaware, then went to a maiden special weight 60 at Gulfstream Park, and is now at a maiden special weight 84 at Gulfstream Park. This horse keeps moving up in class, which says, I think it says this horse, there's some expectations here. This horse is starting to show something. And indeed, from first to second time out, you saw a 15-point Beyer speed figure increase. You also saw this horse finishing 6th to finishing 2nd by half a length. So this horse showed that sort of progression you'd like to see. I also like the fact this horse has worked out twice since that last race on December 3rd. Some nice works, pretty crisp 4 furlong work on December 17th, and then a nice 5 furlong work on the 24th. So this horse is in good shape. I like that a lot. I think this is, like I said, just a sneaky underneath play. This is a horse actually that ran well off of Lasix, ran on Lasix first time out, took off Lasix, ran better second time out. I like this horse in this spot. I think this horse has a real shot to finish underneath. Do I think that's a win candidate? Maybe not. But if you're playing in vertical exotics, if you're liking some of the favorites, this is a horse that's going to add some value, I think, underneath if you're looking for like an exacta key box or an exacta box in some way. Well, let's move on to race number 3 on the card, which is the first of the 5 graded stakes races on the card. And this is the Sugar Swirl Stakes. And this is a grade 3, which is 6 furlongs on the dirt. And This is one where I'm going to fade the chalk. Now, there's some horses later and some races later in the card where chalk is going to be a little hard to get by, but we're going to try to get by it here. And we're going to try to get by Frank's Rocket, who is the 4-5 morning line favorite. Why am I fading this horse? First, let me say I really like Frank's Rocket as a horse. It's a horse that always gives a good effort every single time out, always tries really hard. That said, Frank's Rocket won a lot of races in 2020 and hasn't won a lot of races since 2020. Has won a couple, won the pink ribbon at Charlestown 2 out ago. This is also a horse that ran really poorly at the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. You know, I'm on the record for saying I typically like fading horses coming out of that Breeders' Cup. We've not seen many horses fire too effectively. Taba obviously did last week. I think that was kind of a special circumstance. Frank's Rocket, I don't know if Bill Mott's got this horse fully cranked up to really run here. This horse might have other things focused later on down the road. This is also a horse that lost last year's Sugar Swirl Stakes to Center Isle. And I should point out that was, she was coming into that in probably a little bit better form in terms of just running a little bit more consistently rather than coming off a huge effort at the Breeders' Cup. So I'm going to try to, like I said, move past Frank's Rocket. And where am I going to go? Well, it's only a 6-horse field, so there's a limited places you can go. But I like the number 6 horse, Capellia. This is a horse for Philip Bauer with Martin Garcia up on the mount. And this is a horse that's won the last 2 times out while stepping up in class, winning a listed stakes race last time out, $300,000 listed stakes race. And I think this is a horse that, like I said, has shown the ability to be a little bit more aggressive and doesn't need the lead, but will be near the lead. And I think that the fact that this horse is going to be starting from the number 6 post, I think is advantageous, can sit kind of just outside of the pace and kind of watch how everything goes, because in all likelihood, the one Eady Meeny Mighty Mo is going to be the one who's going to set the pace. Capellia should be sitting just off of that. I think it's a good position for this horse. And I think ultimately she gets the trip. I do also like the number 1. Joyful Cadence has a little bit of value, not much more value, but 5-1 on the morning line. This is a John Ortiz horse jockeyed by Tyler Gaffleone. And quite simply, this is a horse that you should not fade. This is a horse that is 13 for 13 at 6 furlongs on dirt. So don't fade this horse at 6 furlongs on dirt. I don't love the inside post position, especially with a horse that has good speed, but not great speed. I do wonder if she's going to get burned up necessarily trying to, break out from that number 1 post. But I do like Joyful Cadence a lot. Actually came up just short against Capellia last time out. Has never raced at Gulfstream Park, but the works look very, very strong coming into this race. So there's a lot to like there with Joyful Cadence. But ultimately in the Sugar Swirl, I'm going to try to get past Frank's Rocket. I kind of really like the second and third choice of Capellia and Joyful Cadence. Well, let's move to race 4, which is a $35,000 claimer on the turf. And this one is, like I said, a fascinating race. You're going a little bit long on the turf at 1.16 miles. The favorite is the number 3 horse, Classic Lady, at 5-2. This is a Christophe Clement horse that has been running in like state restricted stakes races and actually ran in the Suwannee, which is later on in this card, actually ran in that race last year against Sweet Melania and Shifty She. This horse feels like diminishing returns. She's 7 years old. She's coming off a layoff and she's dropping way down in class. I don't love that. I also noticed this horse has traditionally run well coming off a layoff, as she's going to be coming off a layoff here. But when you look over the last year or so, every time she comes off a layoff, it's a little bit diminished. It's a little bit less. It's a little less impressive than what it was the time before that. So coming off the layoff, I don't know what to expect here. I'm going to try to move past the 3 Classic Lady. Therefore, I like looking like a queen at the number 1 post, going off at 5-1 for Monica Magui and jockeyed by Jose Ortiz. Quite simply, this is a different horse on turf. I know you're going to see this. You're going to go, this is a lifetime kind of a plotter, 50 career races, only 8 wins. Yeah, but this horse on turf is a little bit different. 7 for 35 winning, but more impressively, 19 for 35 in the money. This is a good turf horse, and that's just been stuck on the synthetic at Gulfstream Park really for the last year. But whenever this horse gets a chance to pop onto the turf, it pops a nice number. It pops a nice figure. It just did that last time out, going from a 59 buyer speed figure on the synthetic. Next time out, which was only 7 days later, believe it or not, ran a 75 and finished third by 2 lengths in a state restricted optional claimer. So I kind of like this horse in this spot at 5 to 1. I think you're getting good value. And like I said, for a favorite that I'm going to try to look past a little bit, like the one here a little bit. So where am I going to go for my value? I think there's a few horses. I think the outside, I think you could make a case for the 9. I think you could make a little bit of a case for the 10 as well. Both of those horses, Passion Plus and Sandpiper Memories, are interesting, I think. Ultimately, I went with the 11. Tis Impressive at 10 to 1 for Jose Pinchin. Louis Saez on the mount. Saez stays aboard, which is what I like. Saez hopped on last time, first time on turf in a while, and this horse showed a lot of ability, showed the ability to close late, has strong late speed figures, which I like to see from that pace projection. 4 for 4 in the money on the turf at Gulfstream Park, has never been off the board on the turf at Gulfstream Park or in its career. And 1 for 1 finishing in the money at this distance. I just think this is a pretty strong underneath play that you're getting a little bit of value on at some pretty trusted connections. Pension, a good trainer down there in South Florida, and Saya is obviously a very talented rider. So really like this combination. That's where I'm going to be going in race 4. Well, let's move to race 5, which is the second of the 2 maiden special weights, a mile and a 16th on the dirt for 2-year-olds. And this one is a little bit interesting as well. And it's, oh, this is one where I really wanted to go back and look at some of the previous races because you don't have as many first time starters here. You actually have a few horses with experience. Well, in fact, all these horses have some experience. So one of the things I like to do is go back and look at the races that these horses came out of. And that really led me to Collier's Time, 5 to 1 on the morning line for Ian Wilkes, Julian Leparoux on the mount. Now, I know Julian coming from behind is not necessarily, Julian on the lead is kind of where I like him. This horse is going to be coming from behind, but I think Leparoux can make one big move. I've seen him do it before. And so I like this horse in this particular case. I also think this horse going long is actually beneficial. Now, if you look at the pedigree wouldn't necessarily point to that. But I think this horse's running style points to that. I think this horse's works point to that. The more distance you want to give this horse, the better. The other thing is the last race this horse ran in was a $93,000 maiden special weight at Churchill Downs. Who ran in that race? Corona Bolt won that race. Corona Bolt just won a stakes race at Fairgrounds last week. Who finished second in that race? Communication Memo. Communication Memo broke its maiden at Oaklawn Park a couple weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was Oaklawn Park. And at a very minor price. I mean, in terms of being an overwhelming favorite for Steve Asmussen. So, that race has come back very live. And I just think this horse at 5 to 1 gives you a little bit of value here. Now, in terms of some more value, always like the angle of getting blinkers on with these young horses. And that's where I'm going to go with the number 4 horse, Dream Knight, 12 to 1 on the morning line for Safi Joseph Jr., Edgar Zayas aboard. Get the blinkers on. This is a horse that's shown improvement, is admittedly stepping up in class, had been running in kind of lower level maiden special weights at Gulfstream and Tampa. Still, though, there's not a ton of speed in this race, interestingly enough. Sometimes when you look at these maiden special weights races, it's a lot of horses that like to be on the lead, a lot of ones across the running line. There's really nobody who has ones across the running line. I have a feeling this horse is just going to get on the lead and kind of go and be able to set its own pace. Like the fact this horse is getting blinkers. I think this is a real advantage for this horse. Safi, getting the blinkers on is a 20% winning move. So I think there's some benefit here. Stretching this horse out. Again, going sprint to route for Safi is a 23% winning move. Listen, Safi in South Florida is a trainer that I love to play because that's where he fires off most of his winners. So think that this is a horse that can really run a big race at 12 to 1 on the morning line. Well, let's go to race number 6, which really starts our string of stakes races. And this is the Rampart, which is a listed stakes race. And we're going to go a mile on the dirt for this one. And ultimately, I ended up on Colorful Mischief as my top pick. And this was one where I really went back and forth on. This is a horse, Colorful Mischief, that's coming off a little bit of a layoff. But I looked at some of the other horses that potentially could be there. I looked at the 7, Mary Quite Contrary at 3 to 1. I don't know. This horse is stretching out, coming off of a layoff. This horse doesn't necessarily have great early speed, also doesn't necessarily have the speed to close into something late. So I'm not 100% sure this horse really kind of levels up, especially for a trainer that doesn't usually get him cranked up coming off of a layoff. So I'm a little bit worried there. The 5 Zain Al Arab, this is a horse that I think is better on turf, quite frankly. The only other kind of among the favorites, the only other one is Allworthy. Again, who's a horse that I just don't think has the early speed to get there on the front end, and I don't think has the late speed to close into something. And again, you're getting a small price at 3-1 on that horse. So ultimately, I went with Colorful Mischief at 5-2 for Todd Pletcher and Irad Ortiz Jr. This is a horse that's just, quite frankly, run against better competition. Ran against Wicked Halo last time out. Before that, finished third to Echo Zulu and Tarabi. Has run against Colorful Mischief, has run against some really nice horses. So I just think this is a horse that, like I said, has shown a lot of ability and has won a couple of races, has a little bit of a layoff. Admittedly, didn't run great going a mile and a 16th, but that was 2 turns. I think a 1-turn mile is going to hit this horse right between the eyes. I like this horse quite a bit at 5-2. Like I said, going through some of those other horses, I also think this is a horse that's just going to get the lead again. And I think there might be a little bit of pressure, but I think this horse is going to be able to get the perfect trip breaking from that 4-post. It can go to the lead if it wants. It can rate a little bit if it wants. So I think ultimately Colorful Mischief just gets the right trip. Now, for value, I like Iliogami quite a bit for George Arnold and Luis Saez. This is a horse that's second back from the layoff. Arnold is firing at a 23% win rate at that sort of a layoff with a 378 ROI. So he's obviously winning at a nice price coming off the layoff. Like to see that a lot. This is a horse that's cutting back slightly in distance, going from that mile and a 16th to a mile. I actually think that's going to be beneficial here. This horse has a good late speed, has decent early speed to make sure it won't be shuffled back too far, breaking from that inside post. But like I said, has that ability to close into something. If there's a little bit of a pace battle up front, I think Iliogami is really going to benefit. 6-1, you get a little bit of value here. I also think this is a horse that when he's had the ability to string together races when he's been healthy and outside of layoffs, he's actually run really well. He's had a few lines in his running lines. He's had a few breaks and layoffs that I think has kind of stunted his development at times, or her development, I should say. But I think Iliogami ultimately in this spot has a chance to run really well. So let's see where we're going to go with race 7, which is the Suwannee River. And this is a grade 3 mile on the turf for 3-year-olds and up. Quick plug, check out Doubling Down. Colin Sheehan and I went through and we did a daily double on race 7, race 8, so you can get our picks for those. But obviously, you can hear mine here, but you can hear Colin's as well. We have some that we agree on, some that we don't. So where did I go in the Suwannee River? Well, I went with a favorite up top, but I gave you a big, big price in the value play. So ultimately, I went with Scottish Star. This is a horse for Todd Pletcher that I think is a pure miler. I just think this horse is a miler. This horse ran huge down in Argentina, won a grade 1 race down in Argentina, then comes to the United States and did this on the turf, then comes to the U.S., actually debuts pretty well, runs in 2 straight grade 3s, doesn't embarrass herself at all, runs competitively in those, runs third in the Chillingsworth last year at Santa Anita to CC and On Deck. No disrespect there, but that goes from Richard Mandel's barn to Todd Pletcher's barn, switches surfaces on the turf. Horse immediately wins first time out, then goes a mile and a 16th, just gets beaten out by just a fraction, loses by a head. I think this horse is a pure miler. I think a mile is going to be a perfect distance for this horse. I think the inside rail is actually perfect for this horse. This horse has speed, so it's not going to get shuffled back. I really like this spot for Scottish Star. And I think that if you look at some of the other favorites here, a horse like Lady Rockstar, I like a lot, but is breaking from the far outside. It concerns me a little bit. This horse is also coming off of a layoff. I do like Brendan Walsh's barn quite a bit. And obviously, the Lady Rockstar has Irad Ortiz aboard. So there's a lot to like there. I think that's a very good horse. I'd love to have this horse next time out, though. The other horse that I think is going to get some action is probably Stolen Holiday at 9-2 for Shug McGahee, second off the layoff. This horse is kind of back in this grade 3 territory where actually won before. But here's the thing. Take a close look at the PPs for Stolen Holiday. Stolen Holiday has never won a route race off of the lead. Never. That is a big deal because there are multiple sprinters in this field who are much quicker than Stolen Holiday and will get to the lead and set much faster fractions than Stolen Holiday does when she is on the front end. So that's something which concerns me a great deal, is that I like this horse a lot, but I don't think the race is going to shape up well for the Stolen Holiday at all. Therefore, I like this huge price for Sweezy Kahiko with Vasquez up on the mount. And this is a horse I just absolutely like because it's got those muddied running lines because of Gulfstream Park. If you start pulling out the synthetics, what you see is this horse has had a steady progression on the turf. The last 4 times on the turf has gone 79, 82, 85, 89 Beyer speed figures. Keeps getting faster, keeps improving. First, second, fourth by 2 lengths, and first last time out. I like this a lot. This is a horse that's 5 for 12, winning at Gulfstream Park, 8 for 12 in the money. This is a horse that's 4 for 10, winning at this distance, 7 for 10 in the money. There's a lot to like here with Kahiko. And so at 15 to 1, a big price, I think you should consider including on your deeper exotics. Well, let's move to the 8th race on the card, which is the Mr. Prospector. And this is another grade 3, 7 furlongs on the dirt for 3-year-olds. And here I'm going to go with one of my favorite 3-year-olds, actually, Papa Cap. This is a horse I think that this race sets up perfectly for, because there is going to be a lot of speed in this race. Now, typically in these sprints, I don't like to overthink it. I don't like to go too much in terms of, oh, we got to bet the closer in a 5.5 furlong sprint or a 6 furlong sprint. You start getting to 7 furlongs, though, that concerns me. I don't just go with speed of the speed at 7 furlongs, because when you start looking at this race, there's a lot of horses that are going to try to burn each other up on the front end. As a result, I like a horse like Papa Cap that's going to sit off of that pace, not too far off that pace, but it's going to sit kind of in a stalking mid-pack trip. This is a horse that's run against some of the best competition out there, has run against Jack Christopher, has run against Gunite, has run against Running Son of a Gun, has run against My Prankster, has run against good horses, even stretched out running in that Florida Derby, that Risen Star, the Lecomte, the BC Juvenile. I mean, this is a horse that's run big-time races. This is a horse that has run outside of its maiden special weight. Every single race in this horse's career has been a grade 1, grade 2, or grade 3 race. In fact, only once has this horse ever even run a grade 3 race, mostly grade 1s and grades 2s. Coming off a layoff from Mark Cassie's barn. Mark Cassie's barn, in my opinion, has been firing as of late. This is also a gun runner, and you know that when I always joke, when all else fails, bet a gun runner. Papa Cap at 4 to 1. Really like this spot. Going to try to fade Sibelius here, who's the favorite, who I just think this horse is not going to get home and is going to face too much pace pressure. In terms of a value play, I'm going to give you an even bigger one than I gave you in the last race. I'm going to give you 20 to 1 on No K No. Why do I like this horse so much? This is an underneath play, admittedly, but I think this is a horse that just has continued to improve. If you scratch off the race that sent this horse to the bench, the last few times out, we've seen this solid progression on the dirt from an 85 to an 88 to a 91 Beyer speed figure. So we've seen this horse and continually improve. Fausto Gutierrez is 28% second off the layoff with a 310 ROI. When he and Morales team up, winning at 21% clip. You also, Gutierrez is winning at a 50% clip in graded stakes races. Hello. That's not a bad winning clip to have. This is a horse that's 4 for 5 at Gulfstream Park. I just think No K No makes a lot of sense. I know this horse is stepping up in class, but I think this horse is also going to set a very nice trip, has decent late speed figures, is not going to get sucked up into that speed. Like this horse a lot at a pretty big price. Well, let's move to the next race, which is the Fort Lauderdale. And this is one that features a horse that is used to coming off long layoffs, and that is the favorite, Colonel Liam. And indeed, that is where I went with my top pick for Todd Pletcher and Irad Ortiz Jr. It's just really hard to make a case for some of these other horses in here. I just don't think they quite have the same caliber. They've not been racing against the same caliber of horses. Colonel Liam's just such a good horse. And like I said, has demonstrated the ability to win coming off long layoffs before. Did it last year at the Pegasus World Cup Turf Invitational. where he just came off the bench off of about a 6-7 month layoff and laid it down and ran a 102 buyer speed figure. I mean, this horse can run big numbers, is training really well, is training regularly, likes Gulfstream Park, 3 for 3 down their career, likes the turf down there a lot. So this horse, has plenty of time and plenty of rest after running at Maidan. Now, you might say this horse is ultimately not pointed towards this particular race, is using this race to get ready for the Pegasus World Cup Turf Invitational, but I still think this horse is kind of the class of this field. That said, I still think there's some value to be found in this race. I like the number 4 Shadow Sphinx. This is a horse that is 2 for 4 at this distance, 6 for 9 in the money this year. This is a horse that actually took almost a year and a half off as well, or about 13, 14 months off, and has come back in 2022, a much different horse, and has been running really well, has been through a couple of barns, but is now running for Mike Makers, finished second last time out in a listed stakes race at Aqueduct. I think this is a horse that absolutely has been running against some tough competition lately, but I think the pace is also going to set up really nicely for this horse. This horse has incredible late kick. I like that in this particular race because I think there's going to be some speed up front. I think that's going to set up nicely for Colonel Liam, but I think it's also going to set up really nicely for Shadow Sphinx. Well, let's move to the 10th race, the Harlan's Holiday. And if you know me at all, you know that my favorite horse is Simplification. And Simplification is running in this race. But you will see that Simplification is not my top pick, and he is not my value play, even though he is 5-1 in the morning line. I just think Simplification has looked to be a tired horse. Now, I know he's returning to South Florida. I know people say give him one more shot in South Florida. He's a different horse down at Gulfstream Park. That may all be true. He has just run a very, very long and aggressive 3-year-old campaign, and he just looks like a tired horse. And I'm just not sure what he's got left in the tank. I really wish they would have given him a little bit more of a layoff before he ran again. But here he is at the Harlan's Holiday. So who do I like in this race? My top pick, the Chilean horse. That's right. Safi went down to Chile, got himself O'Connor, a Chilean horse that is just lights out down there, and came up here and just blew the barn doors off of a $62,000 optional claimer field that went a mile and a 16th on the dirt, first time out in North America. And who did he beat in that race? Horse Octane, who came back to win a listed stakes race at Tampa Bay next time out. So posted a 99 buyer speed figure in that race. Like I said, Safi in South Florida is not somebody I like to trifle with. So I think O'Connor up top just makes a lot of sense. Skippy Longstocking's also in this race, who's a big name. I like Skippy. Skippy likes wet conditions. Skippy also, I think, likes longer distance. I think a mile and a 16th on dry dirt is probably not ideal for Skippy, who is the other Safi Joseph Jr. Horse in this race. Ultimately, for value, I went with Pioneer Medina, 6-1 on the morning line. Todd Pletcher horse with Louis Saez aboard. This is a horse that really interesting. This horse was on the Derby trail, ran in the Derby, finished second to last in that race, way back. And then kind of took a break, came back, didn't run well in the Smarty Jones either, didn't run well in the next time out, but then finally at a mile and a 16th, ran a really nice race last time out, $125,000 optional claimer. And, that race has already featured a couple of repeat, comeback winners. So I like to see that. I think this is a horse that finally now is getting back to what it does best and has that sort of confidence. I think this horse also has some nice late speed figures. I think this is a horse that just will be able to get positioned nice early. I like that Saez is back on the mount. Saez, of course, rode this horse at the Risen Star, also ran this horse last time out when it got that win. So I think that third back in the form cycle, you finally saw this horse kind of fire the way we would expect Pioneer Medina to fire. 6-1 in the morning line. I think there's some value to be had there. Well, let's close out the card in race 11 with a $25,000 optional claimer, mile and a 16th on the turf for 3-year-olds and up for who are fillies and mares. And listen, I always try to give you a little bit of value as we close out the card. And I did it again here. Tried to get past the favorite, who is a Chad Brown horse, the 11, who's 8-5 in the morning line, coming off of a layoff, admittedly ran a huge race last time. But I just, that far outside post, I just don't love it. And so who am I going to go with? I'm going to go with Texas Shuffle up top, which is a Shug McGahee horse. It's a horse that had really shown some nice progression. Last time out, something clearly went wrong, sent this horse to the bench. Prior to that, though, this horse had really been progressing and running nicely, I think. Shug McGahee actually on this long of a layoff, which is about a 6-month layoff, is actually winning at a 24% clip coming back. So I think this is a horse that had been running at a much higher level as well, running in some allowance races. Now dropping this horse down to an allowance claimer, getting this horse a little bit of experience. I think this horse at 5-1, it's a very fair price on the morning line, and it's certainly my top pick. And then for my value play, I'm going to go right next door to the number 4 Charge Account at 12-1. Again, a horse that has muddied running lines. But if you look at this horse running on turf, this horse makes sense. This horse has run against very, very good fields. And you might say, Matthew, they were claiming races. Perhaps. But take a look at this. Look at the race 2 back, September 4th at Saratoga. This horse ran against Adelaide Miss. All right. Now, what's important to note is actually that I should say that August 3rd race, 3 back, ran against Adelaide Miss. Okay. Won that race, beat Adelaide Miss. Okay. Now, here's the thing. Go up and look at the number 1 horse, Princess Theorem, 6-1 in the morning line. All right. This is a horse that lost to Adelaide Miss. Okay. So this is one of those where, and that was 2 back in the fairgrounds. This horse lost to Adelaide Miss in a stakes race, finished well back that day. So if you're using different horses as points of comparison, here's this 4 that's 12-1 who's beaten Adelaide Miss. Here's the 4. Here's this 1 that's 6-1 that's lost Adelaide Miss. I'll take that 4 all the time, especially, like I said, getting back on his preferred surface at a good distance. I just think at 12-1, this horse provides some nice value underneath. Well, that is the card. All 11 races, top pick, top value play. Listen, I hope you guys have a successful day at the track. Hope you enjoy it. Obviously, all of us here at Trusted Profits hope that you have a happy and prosperous 2023. We're always trying to help you out here to make sure you have a prosperous time at the track. But like I said, thank you again for all the support in 2022. Best of luck at the track today and all the days. But until next time, my name is Matthew Desantis. You can find me on Twitter at the handle @FailToMenace. Like I said, until next time, have a happy and prosperous time at the track. And remember, it's now post time.